I'm chairing. I know this isn't Jim, so just to let everybody know, I'm chairing for today. Jim is off traveling. So if we get going, we'll get out of here early because I always make these end earlier.
Yes.
So everybody's smiling here, right? It's beautiful.
You're our favorite chair.
Good job already. No.
I'll call us formally to order. Now, before we approve the agenda, I just want to say that the agenda was revised to remove item 2025-20. The 2025 state legislative session included changes to the Corridors of Commerce program regarding the geographic balance targets for the funding source. MnDOT was in the middle of the solicitation process for $22 million in readiness grants, and an action was originally on the tab agenda for today. Based on the new legislative language, the process will need to be restarted to allow for metro projects, though touching on I-494 and 94 Beltway and inward, this is a chance for them to apply. So given the percentages of the new law, the metro projects area will be awarded between 25 and 27.5% of the $22 million available for Corridors of Commerce readiness funding, or between 5.5 million and 6.05 million. This funding can be used on planning, so it's not a lot of dollars, but that really is helpful, and engineering type activities for future projects. So this item's going to come back to us actually relatively quickly, either August or September, so stay tuned, we'll get this. So I will ask for approval of the agenda motion.
Anderson.
Anderson, and who's second? Second, thank you. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. So at this time, I have a public invitation for persons who would like to address the Transportation Advisory Board. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Is there anyone here who would like to step forward and speak? Anyone? Seeing none, we will move on to the agenda. We will, the next item on the agenda are the reports, and the TAB Chairs report. The TAB Chairs report, we had the executive board meeting right before this. I think one of the bigger conversations was around what's going to be happening, that's happening at the federal level for us. We're going to have a legislative update for the state soon, but what's happening at the federal level with the reduction in staff at the federal level here to get things going. I think some of the conversation was around how is that going to affect TAB or projects in general that are coming through the system, and a lot of it's on the front end. That's what was the talked about. The getting one up and off the ground and getting approved. It might slow down because of the loss of federal employees. So that's some information I just wanted to impart on you. You know, as things come to fruition through the rest of the legislative season in Washington, D.C., we'll try to get an update for you if we have any updates. I think you know as much as anybody else otherwise, whatever plays out in the news, and that changes at the whim of the wind, I think. So we shall see. So that's the chair's report. Agency reports. We'll start with MnDOT. Connie.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could, I wanted to touch on something personal first to thank a few of you guys who have reached out to me. And as you may know, I was raised in Iran. And what's going on there, it's conflicting to me because it reminds me of nobody likes surgeries, and sometimes you have to do surgery to feel better and get better. And I don't want to dive too far into the politics of it, but I think hopefully good things will come. Having my sister there and her teenage boys and my cousins, and not able to talk by FaceTime as easily, or WhatsApp, by video. It's hard to do that. And the one time I was able to talk to my sister, the fear in her voice and helplessness of not knowing what to do, and talking about evacuation, a city of 10 million is just not possible, and especially since they only sell 25 liters of gasoline at one time, and many people have nowhere to go. Some people have second homes. They can go out in the mountains by the sea and things like that. But anyway, I'm hopeful that things will work out, and I'm glad something is happening. Something should happen, but unfortunately, it gets worse, and many lives will be lost before it gets better. But thanks again for those who reached out. As far as department update, as usual, I'd like to talk a little bit about the safety trends, what's going on. And at this time, we have had, I'll talk statewide, statewide, we've had 140 fatalities. That compares to last year of 188, which is much better. And the trend, I like to look at trends, and if it's a linear relationship, last year, the whole year was 477 fatalities in the state of Minnesota. If the trend continues as is, will be 355, which is 400 has been an average number for many, many years. So I don't know. I don't want to read into it too much, but I'm going to be positive about that. Of all the fatalities statewide, Metro contributes about 40% to all the statewide numbers. I won't go through each county's numbers. The bigger counties have more fatalities. Most of the pedestrian fatalities, we've had 16 statewide, 12 of those in the metro area for obvious reasons, and we've had 10 motorcycle fatalities. 4 of them were in our metro area. And bike, we've had 5 statewide, and 1 was in metro, and a couple of ATVs. So let's keep working on the whole safety. It's in the front of it's our main agenda for all of us, and we'll just continue to work toward that zero goal that we have, that we meet at some point in the future. Just to touch on, again, apologize for all the construction going on, for those who drive through it. Again, we're doing it for you, not to you. It's
Jobs, too.
Yeah.
Good jobs, folks.
Good jobs. People are getting paid. The I-94 Dartmouth, some of the ones that are getting a lot of attention, 94 on the Dartmouth Bridge and a couple of other bridges. We've gone from 4 to 2 lanes. That one is on schedule. Actually, we've been in close contact with the city of Minneapolis on that, because many local roads have been affected by closing exits onto 94. Like, we've switched over to eastbound, so a lot of the ramps going to eastbound have been closed. So we're working to, even the mayor has been involved to help out the local system. But our goal is for that to be done by August 16th, which, the state fair is kind of a goal. Mm-hmm. But the next one that's going to start here, that close to downtown, again, Minneapolis in this case, is the Dunwoody Bridges on 394. Mid-July, I would think. I think the whole Easy Pass lanes will be closed, because they'll be fixing everything on the Easy Pass lane. So only the general purpose lanes will be open. And then next year, we'll do westbound, switch traffic, and then eastbound. So it's going to be mostly next year will be really bad. This year too. I'm actually next week meeting with downtown council, with the businesses, to hopefully talk about it, and for businesses to allow flexibility to their employees. And we've learned how to be flexible and work hybrid, and allowing people to come and go at different hours. And you don't want everybody to show up, drive between 7:30 and 8, and that is a problem. So spread that out a little bit, and we'll get through it. We have actually, I've had meetings along with the city of Minneapolis and entities like Google, where them and Waze, who is owned by Google, who provide information to those who drive in the car. I've always have my Google Maps on no matter where I go, because it sends me, if there's congestion, gives me other options. But they can influence where people go. Some people listen to it, and the idea is to keep vehicles, trucks, things like that out of private neighborhoods, the Bryn Mars are the, who I've met with in other places, and do the best we can to provide good, logical alternatives for folks. We'll hear maybe a little bit about the corridors of commerce. I think the chair mentioned it a little bit. Our website is updated where our the projects, the readiness funding that legislature passed that will be used for future projects, and this is readiness money, basically shelf projects, whatever you want to call it, to get them ready for the next round when it comes for corridors of commerce. And a little bit about, I think we will have a legislative update from the Met Council, I believe, so that might be more comprehensive later, but I'll say a few things about how it, that affected MnDOT and then and the local agencies here. I'll touch on a few, but there's a lot of things that passed. We don't have time to go through all of that. Some of the things that pluses and minuses, our Greater Minnesota Transit budget, general fund was, as you know, there was a big compromise to look to be able to balance the budget. Some very difficult decisions were made, and one of them was Greater Minnesota Transit. $22 million was cut. I think active transportation was $11 million. The one was the NLX from Twin Cities up to Duluth. That one was going to be completely gone, but I think at the end it was compromised down from 195 to hold on to $117 million. But again, that's match money for federal dollars to come into the future. As far as our trunk highway fund, on our operations side, which is our maintenance, I should say, we got a $10 million bump for this coming fiscal year, and then $20 million next year. So that was good. We received $3 million corridor planning, so that's going to be, we're going to be working on that too. That'll be department-wide, so outstate districts will get some. Metro does pretty well most of the time because our district is next to several rural districts, and many of our corridors that we plan is those in those ring counties. So so we're going to go through that. Our base budget construction, I think that went up $60 million. We basically got permission to spend $60 million more, and then the big one was getting authorization for the Blotnick Bridge, $650 million. That's basically authorization to spend the federal money when it comes. One that I was not personally, against my own personal view, $97 million of trunk highway money to build a state patrol building. Although we are partners with the state patrol, DPS, I think there's different ways to build buildings, but again, that's my personal view. But we'll do that and hopefully build a nice, as you know, they're all moving in together in one location, the state patrol. So then there was a list of what was called priority projects that received funding. The four that I know in Metro, one is on 35W and County CASA 50, down by my favorite restaurant, Cracker Barrel. I think the only one left in the state, I believe. I'd like to go there, so I won't say that's why they appropriated the money, but it's a great place to go eat. Then $8 million for a roundabout in Schaefer, city of Schaefer, 10 million for 610 and East River Road interchange. And then $9.5 million for, if you recall, there was a bridge hit on 169 County, Hennepin County 130. It's in Maple Grove, and that project we're looking to expedite. The city was actually studying that to update that interchange, but we decided not to fix the bridge because it was going to cost $2 million to fix it, and then it would have to come out again after this project gets done. So we're expediting that. I was glad these funds came through. Some things of note, the Arcade Street in St. Paul, for those of you who are familiar with it, that caught a lot of attention. It was a big construction project that we are doing, Highway 61 through there, and a lot of businesses were affected. And it became an issue in state legislature, and where legislation was proposed, and one, again, my own opinion, I'm glad it didn't pass, because it was going to be a statewide business mitigation fund to all businesses who are affected by every construction project, and that's a slippery slope, I think, my own view. I think there needs to be a better system to figure that out. I'm not saying some businesses don't deserve that, but a lot of them do. But I think a small amount of $250,000 was passed for the arcade businesses. I believe Department of Employment and Economic Development will handle that and distribute that. Because the way it was before, it was like $30,000 to every business, and there was a lot more questions than solutions with that. A big one for us was the agreement that we'll have to still work on with the MnDOT and McCouncil to allow the council to lend MnDOT up to $250 million. And in the legislation, it was listed, I believe, two projects, two BRT projects that the council wants to build, and then it's on our roads, and we're not ready to. We didn't have the money to spend anytime soon. One is the F line up on 65 on Central and 47, that area. That would be the first one. And then the other one is the famous Riverview project through 7th Street, Trunk Highway 5. And that one, as you know, it was a Ramsey County project. Ramsey County pulled out, and now City of St. Paul, Met Council, and us trying to figure out how that can advance as a BRT project. So this loan can help us do that. So we still have to work on that details of it once we know more about the project. Quickly, Madam Chair, the greenhouse gas legislation is continuing. I think there was some amendments to it as far as using natural systems to help with the mitigation, and to me, I guess means plant more trees. I don't know what all that is, but the experts, I think we will have presentations here about the greenhouse gas more in depth next month, I believe.
Yes, that's one of our information.
Somebody from MnDOT will be here to do that. Just quickly, the last couple of things that didn't go through that I was kind of happy with. One was how to deliver projects. It was by delivering projects through and having PACs, policy advisory committees, and we have that concept now for major projects. Met Council has it; they call them CMC for rail projects, and this was a little bit heavier way of doing it. So that I personally was glad that did not work out. I mentioned the statewide business mitigation efficiencies. As you may know, that back in 2013, there was legislation passed that for MnDOT to show 15% efficiencies every year. I wasn't there at the time when it passed, and the Chamber of Commerce was behind it and several others. And I think to be more business as much as possible and show your efficiencies and what are you going to do with it. So I think MnDOT has been showing, and they submit a report every year where the efficiencies were, but it wasn't showing exactly where it's going. And this legislation was going to propose to put every dime of efficiencies, put it on corridors of commerce projects, which is an easy way for a business to understand, okay, I saved this much here, I put it on this project. But as for those of us that work in government, it's a difficult thing to do, but because to be honest, sometimes with government, you don't pick the cheapest way of doing business. You have other responsibilities. That's just me talking. But that's what reality is. But I think that, again, that was only one way of using the dollars for efficiencies, but it was going to be tough. But my guess is it'll come back again next year in a different way. Another last one I mentioned, Madam Chair, is there was several legislations about local standards and cost participations and things like that. And I'm seeing as a professional, I don't know how to take it. Sometimes personally, I feel like it's a slap in the face of an agency or professionals like us that we can't do our job where we need to pass legislation to tell locals what standards to use. And I mean, locals, as you know, state aid has a process. They set their own standards, county commissioners, city council members, city mayors. They are on those boards that determine what the standards are. But having legislation about, I'm sitting next to a former legislator, maybe she thinks that's a good idea, but I don't think you need legislations for those things. But I'm personally glad that didn't happen and allow the process. State aid and MnDOT is working on a cost participation policy for us to better get along with the locals and who pays for what, and not to become so territorial, and it's a give and take, and to be fair about that. So I think I may have talked too much, Madam Chair.
Okay.
But
Are there questions?
if there are any questions,
Questions or
I'm
comments?
happy to answer.
A lot going on. I think there's a lot going on at the end of the legislative season. Okay. No questions? Frank Kolash, MPCA.
Good afternoon. My name is Frank Kolash. I'm Assistant Commissioner for Air and Climate Policy at the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. And before I begin my remarks, after the tragedies we all suffered this weekend, I want to take a moment and express my thanks and support to all the elected leaders here, present here, and I want to express my appreciation for you and your commitment to continue to serve Minnesotans in very difficult times. So thank you for your service and commitment. On to the types of items that we're tracking at the Pollution Control Agency. It is unfortunately not a lot of good news either in this space. So in late May, the U.S. Senate acted on a congressional resolution under the Congressional Review Act to revoke the California waivers under the Clean Air Act for their Advanced Clean Cars 2 standards, their Advanced Clean Truck standards, and then another set of standards for mobile sources. What that means is that no state, and California is included, can use those standards to drive down greenhouse gas emissions and conventional air pollution emissions from motor vehicles moving forward. There will be litigation around this because the U.S. Government Accountability Office and the U.S. Senate parliamentarian had determined that these waivers were not subject to the Congressional Review Act, but both houses of Congress went ahead and used the Congressional Review Act to strike down those waivers that EPA issued in January of 2025. We are also tracking the proposed reconciliation bill and the rescissions that are happening in both the U.S. House and in the U.S. Senate. And in the U.S. Senate, we're tracking that the Congress would repeal through congressional action the model year 2027 and later light duty and medium duty vehicle emission standards. And that would mean that we would probably revert to where we were in 2023. Or 2020, model 2021, and await EPA to set new vehicle emission standards. So there's the double whammy with that, is that now states can't choose to go with the California system if they would so choose through resolution, And now we're awaiting what we anticipate to be much more lenient vehicle emission standards going forward for model year 2027 and beyond. And that also will repeal the 2030, model year 2030 standards for heavy-duty vehicles moving forward. So we will not have any future-looking standards for those vehicles with substantial greenhouse gas pollution, conventional air pollution, and health impacts that will happen across the country. And then both of the reconciliation bills are rescinding Inflation Reduction Act funds for a number of clean energy programs. I won't go through all of them. I'll try to just focus here on the ones that relate to transportation, but they cancel all unobligated clean heavy-duty vehicle grants programs, unobligated Diesel Emission Reduction Act programs. They will cancel the new and used electric vehicle tax credits for consumers. They will cancel the unobligated grants for sustainable aviation fuel production, blending, and storage programs. The sustainable aviation fuel tax credit remains in place, but these are grants to help with moving the production forward. They will cancel the tax credit for our alternative fuel refueling tax credits. That includes electric charging networks, E85 stations, and biodiesel above B20 and above for the blending. They cancel clean hydrogen production tax credits, which can play into clean fuels and including sustainable aviation fuel. They'll cancel the carbon sequestration tax credits. There's early phase outs of the investment tax credits and production tax credits for wind and solar, and then adding what's called a federal entity of concern condition, which means that certain countries, and you can imagine those, if they're involved, including in the supply chain, then they're not eligible for the tax credits. And then we're waiting to see what they're going to do with the identification of, does start of construction before they expire still make you eligible for the tax credit, or are they going to switch to it must go into service before the expiration of the tax credits, which just changes the math and the timeline for how credits get done. From EPA, they will cancel all unobligated greenhouse gas reduction funds. That includes the Solar for All funding that was part of the Inflation Reduction Act. And for Minnesota, we remain in litigation about access to funds that were dedicated to the Minnesota Climate Innovation Finance Authority. Under that award, it is in litigation right now in front of the DC Circuit Court of Appeals. They'll cancel all unobligated Climate Pollution Reduction Act grants, all unobligated environmental justice block grants, and then they'll also cancel funding in EPA for new pathway development under the renewable fuel standard that was funded in the Inflation Reduction Act. And then, since I know you all, transportation is the only thing you all deal with, they're also canceling the 3 tax credit programs for residential energy efficiency programs to improve the energy efficiency of homes and residences. And to continue on the parade of hits, just yesterday, EPA published in the Federal Register their repeal of greenhouse gas regulations for coal-fired power plants, natural gas-fired power plants, new and existing coal-fired power plants. And the rationale that they are using is a portender of what we think will be in the future, because what they're saying is that the greenhouse gas emissions from coal-fired power plants, natural gas-fired power plants, do not endanger human health and the environment. And that's the rationale that they're using. They'll go out, and so we anticipate later this year we'll see a repeal of what's called the endangerment finding that identifies greenhouse gases under the Clean Air Act as impacting, endangering human health and the environment, which then means under the federal law, there's no Clean Air Act opportunities to regulate or address greenhouse gases at the federal level. We are also tracking what is happening, particularly in the U.S. House this week. They are starting the markup for the federal fiscal year 2026 budget that was proposed by the administration. And that is particularly concerning for many state agencies, but particularly at the Pollution Control Agency and through EPA, because the administration's proposed budget is a 56% cut to the Environmental Protection Agency and elimination of a number of dedicated grants that go to state and local agencies to carry out the full suite of federal environmental laws, basically putting all of the impetus and for funding all of the Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, and other federal legislative environmental laws on states to fund it themselves. On good news, we continue with the Climate Action Framework update in Minnesota. We are going to have additional engagement with stakeholders starting next week with what we call sector-based conversations. That's where we will gather people who are interested in each individual chapter of the Climate Action Framework and continue to go through, develop the climate action steps that we've identified for the 2025 update to ensure that Minnesota has an understanding of where Minnesotans want to go for climate action moving forward to address this existential threat. And then we continue to have good news with grants that the PCA and other state agencies have received and been obligated. So our $200 million Climate Smart Food Systems grant under the Climate Pollution Reduction grant on the IRA remains available to us, and we have started to roll out grants. The Department of Agriculture has made available Climate Smart agricultural grants. The Department of Health has made local government food security grants available, and we are looking to open up RFPs, and the Board of Water and Soil Resources has made some grants for conservation of lands for the Climate Smart Food Systems. That remains available and working on it. And then similarly, funding for our electric school bus grant that we received also remains available, so we're moving forward with that $5.5 million award under the Clean Heavy Duty Vehicles work. And that's what I have for today's update.
Thank you. That's quite the list everybody has to show before us. So any questions, comments? I think it'll be interesting when we look at the greenhouse gas initiatives that we have in our solicitation and how we're going to fulfill that with all the changing tides. It'll be challenging. So, Mac, Carl Crimmins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First thing I need to introduce is the MAC was awarded 7 Telly Awards last year for videos that we produce in-house for training and for information to people. And there was 13,000 people that applied for a Telly Award, and out of the 13,000, we received 7. So we're very proud of that, and the staff. We're in peak summer travel. We have 468 average daily departures. Passenger levels, though, seem to be flat over 2024. And we have one runway down for construction, so we're receiving noise complaints from areas we don't usually receive them. But we're being told the runway should be completed around August, so things should go back to normal as can possibly be. But we have a lot of summer events. We had a lot of summer events over Father's Day at the reliever airports. But now in July, we have a fair at LVN, which is Air Lake Airport from 8 to 11 a.m. We have an art fair at Flying Cloud Airport on July 12th from 9 to 4 p.m. In August, Airport Tenant Barbecue, 11 to 1 p.m. at Flying Cloud. On September 8th, Airport Tenant Barbecue, 4:30 to 6:30 at Anoka Blaine Airport. Then September 17th, we got Airport Tenant a lot of barbecues. St. Paul Airport downtown. Girls and Aviation Day is at Flying Cloud on September 20th from 10 to 3 p.m. And then October 6th, another Airport Tenant Barbecue at Air Lake Airport from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. And that's all I have.
Okay.
And I can give this list to Elaine if she wants to send it out to everybody if
Yeah,
they
if you're
want
in
to
the area,
attend.
you might want to stop in to your airport and just say hi to folks. Thank you.
helpful.
Appreciate that. All right. Any questions, comments? Okay. We will move on to the Metropolitan Council. First, start with Deb Barber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of things. So on Friday, we got to celebrate something, which was nice ahead of this long weekend, was we got to celebrate the retirement of the Route 21, which is very nostalgic and also has been operating for 70 years, so it was a really nice event. I will say that over the weekend, the Beeline did launch. Unfortunately, we did have to cancel the launch events on Saturday morning. As you might imagine, we had a number of elected officials scheduled to either participate and speak or just be in attendance. And so out of abundance of caution, we did cancel everything. So we'll figure out into the future if we can find a way to celebrate the Beeline. But we're excited it's up and running. And then finally, tonight, we're starting something that we used to do in a certain manner at council, but we're kind of recreating it. We're doing a committee of the whole on the road, and we're being hosted by the very gracious mayor of Chaska. Because of course, District 4, we're the guinea pigs for everything, I've decided. So this is the first one we're doing. We're doing it at Chaska Curling Center. There's a open house starting at 4:30 and a panel discussion from 5 to 6. It'll be myself, the current and former mayor. So Mayor Mark Winchell will also be speaking on some of the history around the facilities and where we're at. We'll also have the mayor of Carver, Courtney Johnson, and then also representatives from the Shakopee downtown business community and the Shakopee Maniwaki-Sioux community. So we're going to start trying to do this in different districts, get out more in the community. This is our first trial at it, so we'll see how it goes. So, but it's pretty exciting, and if anyone wants to go for a leisurely drive to the West Metro tonight, we would welcome your attendance.
Well, that sounds exciting. Thank you. That's nice to start that back up. We'll have a legislative update. Is Judd here?
Hannah, too.
Excuse me?
Hannah's.
Hannah's here? Excuse me.
Yeah.
Hannah, I'm sorry.
Hi, Chair. Thank you. Yeah, unfortunately, our Government Affairs Director, Judge Shetland, couldn't make it today, but my name is Hannah Pallmeyer. I'm the Government Affairs Manager here at the Met Council, and appreciate the invitation to talk to you all about a few things at the council. And I have not presented to you all before. Do I advance this myself, or? Yes. Okay, perfect. And I know several other folks have already talked about this, but the 2025 legislative session is a budget year. So the legislature needed to set the budget for the state for the next biennium. The governor had proposed a budget for the state, as was alluded to by Connie. There were a lot of general fund constraints on the budget this year when the when the February forecast came out a few months ago. It showed that there was a projected balance for the upcoming biennium of about $450 million, but an upcoming projected shortfall for the tails for the 28-29 biennium of roughly $6 billion. So the legislature and the governor were working together to try to address some of those structural issues in the budget. So the focus this year was mostly on these larger omnibus bills, and the legislature met starting in January. They met until May 19th when they are obligated to stop meeting, and then there was a one-day special session earlier in June to wrap up the budget. So I just figured I would walk through a few of our transportation items that were included in the budget, and then I'm happy to take any questions. So the council is receiving about $3.5 million in general funds for the next biennium for transit operations. That's a pretty significant reduction to our transit operations from general fund of about $61 million over the course of the biennium. The legislature, I think, acknowledged that by setting a higher tails number for the 28-29 biennium of roughly $20 million a year. So I think, we are able to continue to do our transit operations for the upcoming biennium with this reduction, and then we'll have higher general funds in the following biennium. We did receive full base funding for Metro Mobility and Metro Move services, which is really important for the council. This is the first year that program is a forecasted program of the state, so the numbers that we were allocated for general funds match that amount that we had forecasted. And then we also received regional transit capital bond authorization. This is something that the council has pursued for several decades. And the one thing that is new this year about it is that there is a small general fund interaction between the regional transit capital bonds and property taxes in the state of Minnesota. And so to avoid having a general fund interaction, the bill authorizes the Department of Revenue to retain that amount of money, which is authorized or expected to be approximately $1.8 million in fiscal '27, and then $3.9 million in the entails. So that just money will be retained by the Department of Revenue from the regional sales tax to account for that general fund interaction. Other financial aspects that you'll find in the bill, the council is expected to provide $1.4 million from the regional sales tax to 4 transportation management organizations in the metro area. And then there was a lot of discussion at the legislature this year about funding suicide prevention barriers on the Washington Avenue Bridge that in Hennepin County that connects the U of M. And the legislature ended up deciding to have the Met Council provide, the regional sales tax provide $2 million. And that is from the 5% of the money that the council gets that goes to you all, the Transportation Advisory Board. So it is from the active transportation part of the regional sales tax. And then $6 million is then expected to come from Hennepin County's local option sales tax for a total of $8 million. And $8 million was the amount that the University of Minnesota had identified as a need for this bridge. In terms of some policy items, I'm not going to talk about all of them, but just wanted to highlight a few. I think Connie already identified the first one, which is this loan authorization for up to 2 Metro BRT projects. Another item that we were really excited about is that in 2023, the legislature passed a pilot project for fare-free transit, and part of that was to make all regular route transit provided by the council and regional transit providers free for people who are certified Metro Mobility riders. That project started in 2023 and went through the end of the 2024 calendar year. And then we went in for an ask to make that permanent, which the legislature decided to do in the transportation bill. So we're excited to see that. The third one, not really applicable to TAB, but we were working on getting some Met Council procurement alignment with state procurement alignment to allow us to more easily do business with small businesses and targeted businesses. We are changing some of the legislative reporting requirements about some of our transportation finance and cleaning and repair standards reports that we submit to the legislature. None of the information that we are submitting to the legislature is changing. It just sort of realigns some of the deadlines and consolidates some duplicative reporting that we were doing. The last 2 years, we've had a lot of new reports coming from the legislature, and we just wanted to make sure we were providing the right information at the right time to the legislature so that they could make decisions based on the most accurate information. The council is required to do a bus rapid transit alternate mode analysis and the Metro Blue Line extension corridor as part of the new bill. That can happen at the same time as we continue to work on the Metro Blue Line Extension Light Rail project, but it is a new report that will be due to the legislature in mid-2026. The council was also directed to analyze high subsidy regular transit routes in the region, and we also have a report that we will need to submit to the legislature in 2026 on that topic. And then 2 things that are more MnDOT related, but the Met Council is very closely tracking is a special transportation service, so that's Metro Mobility and Metro Move. As I mentioned, this is the first biennium that's a forecasted program of the state, and so the legislature is asking MnDOT to analyze our forecasting practices to make sure that the information that we are providing to the legislature has other people looking at that information as well, so that we can make sure that what we're providing is accurate as we go through the upcoming budget cycle for the 28-29 session. And then there's also going to be a study on wheelchair accessible vehicle supply and availability that MnDOT will be taking. And, I'll be very interested personally to read that and see how that might kind of intersect with some of our work at the council. And I apparently did not put my name on the last one, so we'll end there. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Hannah. Other questions regarding these changes or anything? Comments, questions? No, thank you for the presentation. If you didn't get this was emailed to us. It's up online now. If you didn't get it, if there weren't enough copies outside, you can go download it now. And then we have the STA. Gary Hansen.
Madam Chair, just a couple of updates. Maple Grove Transit is installing bike lockers at its transit stations to help promote active transportation, which I know we support. Final recommendations from their joint transit needs assessment study with Plymouth Metrolink are being formulated for anticipated implementation of service changes this summer. Southwest Transit's new 494 corridor service essentially has converted their microtransit service into a fixed route, and they've doubled their ridership, and they're reducing ride time while removing transit vehicles from the road. And their autonomous vehicle service booked nearly 1,700 riders in their AV district in May. Minnesota Valley Transit Authority is organizing a business council to foster strategic collaboration between MBTA and regional employers, obtain data and support business needs related to workforce commuting, access and talent retention, provide regular updates on transit service enhancements and infrastructure investments, and create a two-way communication channel for business-driven transit planning. So MBTA is looking forward to developing those business relationships. That's my report.
Thank you. That's very great. I'm glad to hear all that great work you're doing. The TAC report, Joe McPherson. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, members. Nothing new to report as far as the TAC meeting goes, other than the items we're going to cover here in a few minutes.
Okay, thank you. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from May 21st, 2025. Okay, go ahead, make a motion. Who made the motion? Okay, and a second?
I'll second it.
Second. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And then we'll move on to consent business. Joe, you're back up. Oh, go ahead.
If I may, Madam Chair, I think in following on Frank's very sincere comments, I think it'd be appropriate if we had a moment of silence for our legislators, not only those who were murdered, but those who were targeted and just happened.
I was thinking at the end of the meeting we would do
Okay,
that.
thank you. Sorry, Madam Chair.
Sure.
I did want to ask a general question, perhaps, Chair Barber. I went to the Beeline opening Saturday morning, not knowing it had been canceled. I got there about 9:30 and noticed there was no one around. How did the word get out that it was canceled? I just
By
didn't.
social media, and also went out to all the news media outlets, but as you imagine, a number of things were happening in real time that
Right,
morning.
right.
So the primary goal was notifying any of the electeds who were
Okay,
scheduled to
okay.
attend.
All right. Because when I got there, it was just Metro Transit supervisors, and they told me it had been canceled. And on the good news, I do need to compliment my city council member, Gary Hansen. When people think you're not looking, what you do. We were coming back from the Egan State of the City, and you were walking home. We live in the same neighborhood. The property values have gone down since Gary went in, but that's. But Gary was walking down the sidewalk. It was snow, and you had had just your hip or knee replaced. Hip. And there was a single-use plastic bag in the tree. Walked up the embankment. I thought, oh, he's going to slip. Grabbed it and took it home. So thank you, Gary. Member Hansen.
I didn't know I was being stalked.
Well, you know. Thank
Member
you.
Foster?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to add on to the Beeline. I heard about it like 5 minutes, the ceremony being canceled about 5 minutes before I got on the 11 to go down to the Beeline. A few of us actually went there. Member Karwoski showed up. So I would like to thank you for that, for coming in. That was a really great
Where were
moment
you?
to see you and be in community with people who care deeply about transit and also each other. And I will just add on, I left St. Paul earlier, like to head back to Minneapolis, and took the Beeline. I took the 21 for 10 years, twice a day.
Yeah.
And it was a very long ride. That was the fastest trip I've ever been on any transit in the Twin Cities, and it was beautiful. So just thank you to everyone who helped get that built.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Sorry, I missed you. I didn't.
No, I think there were it's a big space.
Yeah, no.
Okay, and back to the TAC.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair, members. So we've got two consent business items here. The first one is 2025-21, and that is a request from MnDOT and Dakota County requesting an amendment to the 2025-2028 TIP to reduce the cost of two HSIP projects and add accompanying STBG program funding for 2 of those projects. The other additional aspect of this request is that they're adding this into the 2025-2028 TIP just in case this 2026 project, which is also included in the 2026-2029 TIP, that's a mouthful, if that TIP doesn't get approved in time. So it'll be included in both TIPs.
Oh, okay. Safeguarding, I see. Any questions, comments? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Go ahead to the next item.
All right, the next item, Madam Chair, is a request to amend the 2025-2028 TIP to reduce the length of and add a bridge to and increase the cost of a project to Minnesota Highway 280 pavement and bridge rehabilitation project. This is funded through MnDOT's funds, so it's not a regional solicitation project, but important to the region. And with that, similar to the previous item, they're adding this into that 2025 TIP, just in case the 2026 TIP doesn't get approved.
Any comments or questions? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye. Motions and seconds.
Oh, motions and seconds, excuse me. I'm sorry. I'll need a, who wants to move both of them?
I'll move.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second, both items, okay. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to the non-consent, and now we only have one because we pulled number 2.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So members, this item here relates to an item you've already heard quite a bit about. At the previous tab meeting, you heard from members of Met Council. I believe Nick Thompson was here, and they gave a presentation on the proposed expansion of the Blue Line and the Gold Line extension transit ways. And so since we recently approved the TPP plan back in February of this year, that plan also spells out any regionally significant projects that come up in the region. And so that plan's updated every 5 years. These projects are definitely regionally significant. So the request here is to amend in the extension of these 2 projects and open it up for public comment, which would take place between July 10th through August 27th, with a public hearing on August 13th. And so, again, the request is that the draft 2050 TPP Amendment Number 1, which is what this request is, changing the alignment and funding for the Blue Line Extension Transitway and adding the Gold Line Extension Transitway to the fiscally constrained plan, be released for public comment.
Okay. I'll move this. Do I have a second?
Second.
There's several seconds. Oh, discussion. We did discuss this at the last tab meeting. Are there discussions or questions about this that didn't get answered, or people who weren't there?
Madam Chair,
Please, go ahead.
I can't speak for Ramsey County, but I know Washington County, we did approve several weeks ago a resolution supporting the extension.
Yeah. Other question? Go ahead, member.
Oh, similarly from Ramsey County, we did pass a board action to support the extension as well too. So we're very excited.
Other comments or questions? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We're going to move on to some information items. We're doing pretty good on time. First up is going to be Scott Merrick is going to talk to us about the TMA certification results. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Scott Merrick, Technical Services Team Leader for the FHWA Minnesota Division. And I'm here today to talk to you about the Met Council TMA certification review process. Just a disclaimer there. For those of you that are not familiar, every 4 years, Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration must jointly review Metropolitan Planning Organization processes for TMA areas, and that's for MPOs greater than 200,000. The last review was completed in 2021. And what this process does, it provides formal advice and guidance and technical assistance to all planning partners in the planning process. So that includes MnDOT, the transit providers, and the MPO. And the FHWA is the lead agency for that review. And for this particular review, we had Molly McCartney from MnDOT Metro was part of the process, and all the suburban transit providers, as well as U of M Transit and Metro Transit and the Met Council staff. This is the geography of the planning process area that we evaluated. It includes the 2020 urbanized boundary for the Twin Cities metro area and the area that's expected to become urban within the next 20 years. So the process that we go through is called a risk-based process. So there's 28 potential areas that we could evaluate. And we basically kind of look at the existing 2020 review process. Also interview MnDOT staff, MPO staff, and the transit providers, and come up with kind of a subset of those 28 planning topic areas that we feel are most worthy of evaluation. Basically those areas that we think could benefit from some recommendations or further guidance. This is the subset of areas that we evaluated. It's basically about half of the 28 areas that are possible for review. Anything from MPO structure, the planning work program for the MPO, public participation, the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, transit planning, TIP, et cetera. There's really kind of three different findings that we can come up with. One is fully meets the requirements, one is substantially meets the requirements, and one does not meet the requirements. And Met Council came up with a fully meets the requirements recommendation. So basically the broad picture good news for Met Council is that Met Council is recertified as the federally designated metropolitan planning organization for the Twin Cities through the year 2029. Now just kind of diving down a little bit in some of the specific recommendations, I'll just kind of look at my notes here for a second. So for the commendations, there was 6 commendations. One was for consultation and coordination tied to the tribal coordinator position that was identified by Met Council staff. Also the Transportation Improvement Program online project map was given accommodation. 3 civil rights areas, and also the Metropolitan Transportation Plan financial forecast. Some of the recommendations that were brought forth were to have a more data-driven process for TIP and MTP performance measures, looking at the transit working group to kind of get a better path forward for the vision of that group. Looking at an environmental mitigation discussion for the MTP. Also updating the planning boundary, which Met Council staff have already done. Updating the MOA for Wright and Sherburne counties, which is in process. Updating the public participation plan, which is in process. And then also some civil rights online updates. So kind of moving forward for those areas that were identified for recommendations, there'll be quarterly check-ins with staff. And I guess I do want to specifically call out the Director Carlson and Amy Venowitz and the entire Met Council staff. You have a very mature MPO planning process that functions at a very high level, and your staff were very responsive and cooperative in us conducting our review, which we appreciate. So I guess with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Well, congratulations on the accommodations too. And sounds like you still got work to do. We all do. So questions, comments? And go ahead,
Madam Chair.
Member Kowalski.
From Washington County's perspective is we're concerned and we want to make sure that counties are still continue to be part of the transit planning working group. Because we do pay 50% of the capital investment in these projects. So it's important to be at the table. So if you can, any comment regarding that?
We at the Federal Highway don't really get involved in that level of the conversation. I think that I would recommend that you talk to your staff about the representation on that group.
I have, and that's our concern from a county perspective, that we still remain engaged moving forward.
Okay, take that back. Member Lindicky.
I just wanted to take a second and recognize it's not every day that the Met Council gets a trophy. So, often I just hear a lot of criticism, which a lot of it is legitimate, but I just think it's nice to hear from sort of a bigger picture that we're doing a good job in the Met Council. We're lucky to have them. So thanks for the report.
Yeah. Agreed. Thanks. Good job. Thank you. The next one is the Regional Solicitation Evaluation Update. Active Transportation Work Group, Glenn Johnson. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. I am on this side today because my alternate has taken the seat. I think it's good to get the experience and also good to present from up here. So it looks very different. It's very tall. So thank you very much for letting me talk today a little bit about the active transportation update. The work group has not met since the last time this group has met, but we did want to talk a little bit about what's been going on behind the scenes. So very quick, there's no presentation. So the big one was already mentioned in the legislative update. $2 million has been allocated out of the active transportation sales tax fund to go to the Washington Avenue Bridge. That's a lot smaller than the original conversation around 15 million or the 8 million in between. So again, a lot more money for us to be able to allocate in next year's solicitation, whatever that looks like. A recap of just what's been going on since last year with the dollars. We did award 16 projects last time around alongside the regional solicitation because this money was new. We didn't have a process in place, but we did award money. And so now we're in the construction season for 2025. And so Joe Whiting, who's been doing a great job behind the scenes, pulling all this together from the technical side, the grant side, everything else, gave us a summary of what's been going on. There is a project that's already under construction, which is really cool to see. We usually talk about the regional solicitation with multiple years in advance. We awarded these dollars last year, and there's already a project that's in process. So I did want to call out Jordan for their Safe Routes to School program. They were very eager to get the funding. I think from day one, they were like, when can we get the grant agreement in place? When can we start construction? It's great to see. And so they've sort of been, I want to say our guinea pig, but that's maybe not the best term for it. But they've definitely been the group that's been working most closely with the grants team and really just figuring out what are the gaps in our process so far. Because again, this is a pilot. We said that up front that we don't know all the things because we haven't done grants like this before from the Med Council. So we are learning a lot, and a lot of that's thanks to the staff that's working on the Met Council side, but also the city of Jordan. So we've identified things, we've fixed things, we're probably going to find more. And I think eventually we'll have a more formal report to the work group, and then we'll bring forward those things that we've discovered back to TAB. I think it's just good to note that we have one project under construction. There are also 4 total executed grant agreements, so Jordan included. So again, people are very eager to get this moving, and that's very exciting. And just as a reminder, when we awarded these dollars last year, one of the conditions we had was that these projects could be started by 2026. So again, we have a lot of applicants who are taking this very seriously, are moving very quickly on it. Good lesson for us for next year about how do we think about timeline to construction. There might be projects that are very, very close to being started, so maybe we can have this in the 1 to 2 year range successfully. That being said, though, there are 2 projects that have been rescinded. One was Lakeville because they accepted a larger Safe Routes to School grant from the MnDOT program. So we don't see that as a bad thing. It's just they found a different funding source. We see this a lot with the HSIP programs where someone might get a different funding source. And of course, we're flexible with that money. I will say this, though, with the regional solicitation federal dollars, there's a lot that has to go on behind the scenes to adjust program years. And we see a lot of those requests, and there's a lot that staff does. With this, the money just gets returned to the account. So we can reapportion it in the next solicitation cycle. It just means you have a little bit more money to be used. The only update that I want to really note on that one is that South St. Paul did withdraw entirely. They did not find a new funding source. They just decided not to move forward with the project as planned. And so because it was a substantial change on that project, they could not move forward with the funding source. So they returned those dollars. So in total, that's $1.7 million that we have back in the account that we can then reallocate for next year. And again, just reiterating, this is a pilot. We are still learning. We expect that we're probably going to get a lot more information out of the remaining 12 projects. That's just going to be time this year, next year, and by the time they have groundbreaking or rescind. And we want to know more about why they're doing that along the way. The other part behind the scenes that's been going on, and again, I have not been attending these meetings. This is Joe Whiting doing all this work, so I want to credit that. All the special interest working group meetings, again, we're going to get a more full update from Steve here in a moment, but we have the summary of what they've been talking about, some of the concerns that they have about scoring, or here's a policy question that we really don't have. This is all about how these dollars are going to be complementing what's already in place. And then the last couple things here is just, we do have a full list of the discussion items, and I'll probably work with Joe and Elaine to figure out what that process looks like to bring forward to TAB. And as far as our timeline, the Active Transportation Work Group is planning on meeting at the end of July, and it feels like a very long gap. I'm looking at my vice chair. We've been, meeting basically monthly, and then it's dropped back a bit, and now it's, I think, 3 months between the meetings. That's for a very good reason. There's a lot that's happening at a different level on the technical side or happening at the regional solicitation level as a whole. We had to kind of wait until we had a little more information from those sides. So that's really the reason for the delay. It's nothing about our work group not meeting for some intentional reason. We just have to get more information. So I think I'll just close with there's a lot on the list. So anyone who's on the work group, we have a lot of work to do reacting to things. I think that's a good news situation. We've really narrowed down what are the specific things that need attention from the technical side. It's time for us to chime in. So I'll leave it at that, except for to say thank you to the work group members. And it's been a year and a half of us doing this. I think it's maybe longer than we all anticipated, but we're getting to the end. We're almost there. So I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you for that great work. Questions, comments? Anyone from the work group here? Want a question, comment? Okay. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So regarding the $2 million, I know we touched on this last month, and I voiced my appreciation to both the co-chairs for writing a letter of, concern, frustration, not for the project itself, the fence on the Washington Avenue Bridge, but the way it was done and the way it was, and the process. Yeah. And I just want to let this group know, and I know a lot of my county colleagues have been very frustrated with the process as well. And my biggest concern is this it's not going to end with this. And I think we need to make sure that we take the direction of the legislature in 2023 in building a competitive process and using those dollars in that competitive process and not allow legislators to take this as a slush fund and use their dollars for a pet project, even though it's a very, very good cause. We really want to support the process that they created in 2023 and require them to stick to it. So there's another pet project in the transportation bill that really impacts Anoka County, which is, again, in my opinion, is very, very unfortunate. And so we are going to figure out a way to fight that along with the funding that is at the hands of this group at that competitive process that we're directed to in legislature. So just want to make that comment.
Yeah, can't agree with you more. Go ahead, Elaine.
I did want to add, we will be bringing straight to TAB an action item for that $2 million next month.
Yeah.
So TAB will have a vote on that, even though it's already allocated by the legislature.
It's a done deal, but it'll be we'll have it as an information item. Okay, go ahead.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I know. I think a lot of us feel the same way. Other comments? Questions? Okay. Thank you. Appreciate the hard work. Special Issues Work Group Workshop. Steve Peterson.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair and members. This will be a quick one. We are coming back next month. Just like the Active Transportation Group, we gave the Policymaker Work Group a few months off, as we talked about last month about we had 100 plus technical staff from agencies across the region that have met 3 times to dig into the criteria and the rules and all the technical details that they have expertise in. So we will have our next policy work group will be before TAB, so July 16th, 10 a.m. Even if you're not a member of that group, you can listen in on those meetings. We'll be in 1A. And then over the next few months, we'll be bringing more material back for your review. So,
okay. All right. Questions or comments, Steve? Thank you. We'll look forward to that. Item number 3 is the Aviation Systems Plan update. Joe Whiting. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Board. So we won't be talking about bikes today, but we'll talk about airplanes. So switching up a little bit. So my name is Joe Whiting. I'm here to present an information item on the 2050 Regional Aviation System Plan update. So if you may remember last year when the full TPP was reviewed at the TAB, aviation element of that plan was also included in there. However, because of timing, we wanted to come back and actually give this a thorough update to make sure we're aligning with the 2050 Regional Development Guide and updating the plan as necessary. So today we're going to real quick go over the Met Council's role in regional aviation. I'd like to remind everyone why we're here talking about aviation. Then we'll kind of look at the work we did to connect those regional aviation policies and plan to the 2050 Regional Development Guide. For quickly overviewing the industry trends and key takeaways, which served as a big part of our update process, then finally some key items in the plan that are seeing a update with this more thorough update process before we go to next steps. So as I mentioned, real quick, we want to talk about the role in regional aviation that we're talking here. So aviation is not something federally mandated, not like our surface transportation systems and the transportation policy plan. It's something that is tasked in state statute for the council to plan for the regional aviation system and through this process. Through this process, the council must prepare the regional aviation system plan, which is within the TPP. It's a state requirement, as I mentioned. It also requires regional airports to produce and update what's known as long-term comprehensive plans, and then the Met Council then must review and determine if those plans conform to the regional system and are consistent with the regional policy. It also requires the MAC and the Metropolitan Council to review and approve the capital improvement plan for the regional airports, and to review any major capital projects which have a significant impact on the orderly economic development of the region. One thing the Met Council does not do is provide or allocate funding for aviation or operate those regional aviation facilities. So another difference from our surface transportation, where we do have a funding role, we do not have a funding role with aviation. So one big element of this process was connecting and aligning our regional policies in aviation to that 2050 Regional Development Guide. Through this process, our staff established small policy review teams made up of local communities and aviation stakeholders. And these teams consisted of representatives from local communities who are adjacent to our regional airports, MAC staff, MnDOT aeronautics staff, Federal Aviation Administration staff, other airport operators. So we do have 2 non-MAC airports, which is South St. Paul and Forest Lake. Industry stakeholders like Delta, some smaller groups in the region as well, and also Met Council staff as well. These are made of 2 teams, one specific to our local communities and one specific to our industry partners, held 3 separate meetings each to review existing policies, draft and review updated policies, which are more aligned with those 2050 Regional Development Guide vision, and then finally to draft and review supporting actions for those policies. In addition, I went out and presented to regional industry groups and communities and solicited feedback when requested from those groups through this process. Really took place through the winter and spring of this year to get us here today. I won't read the draft policy language. I'll just note that there are 7 existing policies which we are maintaining from our previous transportation policy plans, and there's 3 that we're adding here again to better match with our regional development guide. One of those you'll see here in policy 4 is new policies looking to reduce emissions from our aviation activities that negatively impact air quality for adjacent communities. You'll see other 2 new policies here specifically looking to review and make sure we review and update our regional aviation system information and to maintain consistency with our state and federal planning processes. And then finally to begin to consider our regional aviation system beyond just our regional airports. And we'll see where that's coming from here, but thinking specifically of unmanned aerial systems or drones, advanced air mobility, and any other emerging aviation technologies that we're seeing kind of moving through a quick process these years, the last couple of years here. So I will briefly kind of give an overview of what we looked at in these emerging aviation issues and opportunities for the region. I won't go in depth in these. If you have any questions after this, I can certainly talk more a bit about them. But through this process, we developed 6 what we're calling trend papers for some key trends we're seeing in the aviation industry. One of those is for aviation fuels and alternative power sources. So I know we talked about the SAF, so Sustainable Aviation Fuel credits at the federal level, maybe potentially being rescinded, but at the state level, we still have those credits in place, and we are working on creating a sustainable aviation fuel hub in the region. That paper looks at that and also electrification opportunities in the state and region, advanced air mobility, or maybe a more easy term, air taxis. So that might sound like a very far off Jetson kind of idea, but these are something that's potentially being certified next year in the United States by the FAA. And so these are something that's coming soon and something we should be really taking a look at. Unmanned aerial systems, drones, UAS, so that's another paper as well about those. Airport classifications, we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Aircraft noise, and also any FAA, MnDOT, and industry changes that we're seeing. The full papers can be found on our project website, which is linked on this slide here, and then you can go to our aviation page website to read those. They're about 5 to 10 pages each, so quick reads, but really good and interesting information that played a pretty key role in thinking about this plan, thinking about the future. So next I'm going to go into the regional aviation system plan content. I'll only be focusing on items that are seeing an update through this planning process. There's more in the plan that doesn't need to be updated, and so we're not really going to focus on that in this information item, but if you would like to talk about that too, we certainly can as well. So real quick, an overview of our regional aviation system. So the regional aviation system is a mature system, and we're really expecting limited changes with the actual airports in the region. So we've got 9 regional public use airports, MSP, and 8 relievers to MSP. 6 of those 8 are owned by MAC, and the other 2, as I mentioned, are owned by their municipalities. There's also additionally 2 seaplane bases in Inver Grove Heights and Lino Lakes. And also, and a note here is all facilities are projected to be able to meet the forecasted demand in the plan. And so we're seeing here those airports are really very well positioned to continue to meet the demand in the future to 2050. One new part of this plan, we also want to, again, thinking about, again, expanding our considerations of aviation beyond just our airports, is we also want to add locations for our local communities to understand where other aviation facilities are identified in the region. That's helipads, private turf airfields, agricultural use runways, and then also any waterways or water bodies that could handle aircraft traffic. So you can see the blue water bodies on here. So a lot of lakes in the region, actually, you can land an airplane on them if you didn't know that. And so it's something that, you might see an airplane flying or a helicopter flying somewhere. And this will help you really understand where those airplanes are coming from, going from, that are outside of our regional airport system itself. Another big aspect of the plan is the airport classifications. And so airport classifications are used to identify an airport's role in a system, so a regional system, any infrastructure needs, facility improvements, airspace integration and safety improvements, any environmental impacts and noise mitigation. These really require a classification framework to really understand and prioritize investment and system improvement within the whole system. There's 3 layers of classifications. So the federal government and the FAA has their own classifications, which is known as the National Plan of Integrated Airport Systems, or NIPIAS. 8 of our 9 airports are within the NIPIAS system. Forest Lake is the one that's not. It's very important because if you're on the NIPIAS system, you are then eligible for federal funding, and the federal government plays a large role in funding our nation's airports. MnDOT at their state level has their own classification system, and this is something that is classified through the aeronautics branch and set within the Minnesota State Aviation System Plan. And finally, at the council level, we do have our own regional classification systems as part of our regional planning responsibility. And so we're required to classify airports in our regional system as well. What that looks like today, the aviation system has, again, as I mentioned, those 3 distinct types, and you can see here we've got a table of kind of how those all lay out each other at the federal, state, and regional level. And then you can see in the regional airport system how that looks in the region. Now, one of those papers, as I mentioned, we really want to do a deep dive on understanding the classifications and how they've evolved since they were first created. As I mentioned, again, establishing, reviewing, and updating these classifications is one of our roles. And so some background here is that the existing classification system was established in 1977, which is almost 50 years ago. And since then, really seen limited changes and updates throughout those years. The last review of the system was conducted for the 2030 TPP almost 20 years ago, and the recommendations in that were not adopted. One very important note about our regional airport system and considerations on classifications is state law has a role to play here as well. So state law dictates that anything that's a minor airport, so everything that's not downtown St. Paul or MSP, must have runways at a maximum of 5,000 feet. So essentially, if you're a minor airport, you're capped at 5,000 feet, and it requires a state law to change that classification. However, no other metrics required by state law, nor any restrictions of subclassifications are written in state law. So as we think about those minor airports, we can think about those in a little more nuance than we do today. Another big aspect of impetus to do this was the MnDOT Aeronautics did update their state aviation classification system in 2022, so pretty recently. And since that update, we've noticed that our system is a little more out of step. Again, hasn't really been updated in quite a while, and so we want to take a look at that to figure out what's going on at their regional system. So with that update, we are looking to better differentiate our airports within the minor classification while remaining in that minor classification and meeting that 5,000 foot runway limit. However, there is 2 airports that really do come out as very different from the rest of our relievers. So if you look at this map here, we've got a minor primary and a minor secondary classification. That minor primary are really looking at our primary relievers to MSP, including the most regional business jet activity, including higher overall activity. So these are 2 most active reliever airports. and more substantial facility needs to meet those higher activity and higher jet activity. That's Flying Cloud and Noka Blaine. You see those two airports here. So they really do, again, they're the two airports with St. Paul downtown that do see the most of that corporate and business jet activity and really do have different considerations as they develop their airport land than those other minor airports, which are really, we see, primarily smaller piston aircraft for training and recreation purposes with, again, reduced facility needs and impacts of neighboring communities. And what this will help us do is really identify those differences in those minor airports in the region while still maintaining that minor category. And so as we work with our local communities, they're better understanding of what's going on at these airports rather than have them all be kind of that overarching minor category. So a minor change here, but something that will help to communicate the different roles of these airports in the regional system. Connected to this, we're also creating what we're calling airport classification report cards. So there's a lot of information on here, but really what this is, if you really want to dive in on the details of what's going on at each airport, we've created these in-depth reports to track key airport metrics to understand the airport capabilities and aid in identifying the role within the regional system as they evolved. These cards will be updated as we move forward in future aviation system plan updates that will track total jet operations, total regular operations, the type of aircraft which are most anticipated to be using this, any facility criteria like runway length, and also thinking of things like amenities, like what's at the airport that if you're a user or a visitor of the airport, what can you expect to be going on at that airport? We also updated our regional flight activity projections, and as you can see here, MSP is nearing the passenger levels of 2019, so pre-COVID. However, operations are still down quite a bit. And we actually do anticipate that operations at MSP will continue to trail enplanements, which are passengers actually boarding airplanes, as aircraft operators fly less operations with larger planes. So what that really means is we're expecting to see that growth trail with the enplanements. So we're going to see enplanements, which are passengers again boarding those airplanes, to continue to grow, but just less airplanes needed to actually board those passengers, which is a positive for our adjacent communities as there's less aircraft flights going over their homes, while also still moving as many people as we have anticipated in the past. So a positive trend there we're seeing at the MSP airport. At our general aviation airports, we're actually seeing quite a robust rebound from the lows of the COVID pandemic in 2020. General aviation traffic, we've seen declining since about the late 90s, and that actually hit its lowest point in 2020. Now we're starting to see modest growth back at these airports, and it's forecast to continue to grow. However, we do not anticipate any capacity issues at the airports on the airfield side. And just no forecasts have been updated where possible in the updates. So generally what we do is we take those long-term comprehensive plans that the MAC produces and incorporate those activity forecasts, and then we project out to 2050 to understand what it goes all the way out to 2050. Another key element of the plan is the aviation planning process. So as I mentioned, the aviation plan is now part of the TPP. It initially was how it was developed as an independent plan, and it was incorporated in the TPP about 30 years ago, really to keep it in consistency with the other modal policy plans of the region. The aviation planning process also outlines the need for long-term comprehensive plans at our regional airports, environmental compatibility considerations at those airports, and then obviously the federal compliance aspect, which is much more robust for aviation than it is for some of our regional surface systems, and that is identified in this plan here, including the MAC capital improvement plan. So essentially every step of this plan is really reviewed by the federal government and involved with the federal government and the FAA, but this is something that also is done at the local levels to meet those state statutes as well. One key aspect of these, as I mentioned, is the long-term comprehensive plan. So these are a major component of the aviation system plan. When these are completed, we amend the aviation system plan to incorporate those updated comprehensive plans at the airports. And these planning documents for airports, which are used to identify projected aircraft activity, high-level considerations in the environmental level for both noise and for other impacts, and then also any phased facility needs at the airport to meet those projected aircraft activities. MSP plan came through our review process last year, if you remember, and was approved in 2024, and that has been incorporated into this update of the TPP. And then one you'll see next month coming through will be Flying Cloud out in Eden Prairie. That'll be reviewed this year in 2025. We've got the draft plan, and we've been able to incorporate that within the TPP, and then we'll be coming back next month to actually look at that and review it here at the tab before going to the council. We also wanted to look at those long-term comprehensive plan requirements, as those haven't really been touched in a while, and get feedback from both our industry partners and from our local communities to really right-size and align those processes with what we see in other comprehensive planning in the region. So for the long-term comprehensive plans at airports, we're looking to align the plan development timelines with those community comprehensive plan requirements, which is every 10 years. So every 10 years, the cities will be coming through to update their comprehensive plans. We think that's appropriate for our airports to be doing as well. And we're also looking to better identify when expected environmental considerations be reviewed and addressed. So a unique aspect about airport plans is they will definitely have to go through an environmental review period following the plan adoptions. And so we just wanted to identify when we expect to see certain environmental considerations done at those airports, whether it's in that environmental review period or within the actual long-term plan itself. One final big aspect of the plan is land use compatibility, especially with aircraft noise. So this is a major component of the plan. The Met Council does maintain what's known as the Builder's Guide to Mitigating Aircraft Noise in New Residential Construction, document created about 20 years ago. These are identified mitigation measures for aircraft noise to mitigate impacts from existing properties and also to think about future development and how to mitigate noise with residential constructions most specifically. The plan now includes standardized exposure maps like seen here with MSP, with existing land use data and then updated flight noise impact contours. So you see the 2040 ones here. Flying Cloud has also been updated 2040. These are just important to have here because the consistency to understand where our land use patterns are interacting with those noise impacts is something we like to see here. And you can see here on this map that in some places where it developed before the airport, you see less of a land use consideration than before and vice versa. As I mentioned earlier, also the plan also includes additional locations where aviation activity may take place. Again, helipads, private runways. So again, if you think you're seeing an airplane in a weird spot, it might be because there's a private runway, or also know where those helicopters are coming and going in your neighborhood as well. So with that said, so we are at the information stage of this item. We are moving through the TAC tab and then the committee process. I'll be at the Transportation Committee on Monday to give a similar presentation. We'll be coming back later this summer as an action item to release for public comment. That'll open up a 45-day public comment period, and then we'll be coming back at the end of the year to adopt the updated aviation system plan. And with that said, that is all I got here. So if there's any questions or comments, I can certainly take them.
Member Foster.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. On the land use compatibility slide, on the legend, what does extractive mean?
So the legend here, we took this from our CD land use, generalized land use database, and I could not answer. I was assuming extraction, it means something like, mineral extraction, think of gravel pits. And so it's a generalized, so it's trying to catch all different types of extraction, so mining, things like that. But generally for airport noise, I don't think we'll be too concerned about that, but appreciate the question.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Joe, good presentation of a lot of updates. If I understand, you're looking for some feedback to maybe make improvements.
Correct.
I've got a few. I wanted to reference our airport listed, page 53 in Washington County. Good updates, but I think I'm going to suggest some things that'll make it better working with our staff. It mentions in recent years, 2021, a runway extension, and we had to realign some roads, and it introduced a slightly bigger plane, a little more noise. So one of the suggestions is it lists that you engage the city that the airport's in. I think you have to engage the surrounding cities. I mean, we have Baytown, Stillwater, Oak Park Heights, really within a few miles. They're listening to the noise, the impact. So I think it's simple to engage them, and they would appreciate that, and not just the city the airport's in. And then also in the language, maybe the responsibility should be with the users of the airport. If we put that in there. That's it for now, but those would be really good changes. And you may want to consider that for any airport in our smaller cities. There's surrounding jurisdictions that would probably like to have input to any changes at that airport.
Member Kowski, I just want one note here. So for, specifically with Lake Elmo Airport, as you're mentioning, the MAC does maintain what their I think we have Bridget here, correct? The MAC does maintain these planning or stakeholder bodies that meet regularly every quarter, I believe, and that includes all the cities. And I've talked to the mayor of Lake Elmo, and I've talked to the mayor of a few other cities around there, a couple of those meetings in the past, and heard the residents' complaints about aircraft noise, and understand that, you know, when those changes happen with those new runway configurations, things like that, you're going to see new impacts and things like that. So I do try to get out there and talk to as many people as I can.
It'd be nice to put it in right now.
Yeah, and we can certainly add that consideration in there. And then to go with the responsibility of the users as well, and MAC also does, for our reliever airports, have voluntary noise abatement measures that they do have at each of our airports, including Lake Elmo. So that is something we can reference in the plan as well to make that clear, and maybe even link to those documents as well, because they are out there. So
thank you.
Okay. Other comments or questions? This was pretty comprehensive. Go ahead. Mr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I live, as mentioned earlier, I live in Egan, which is the next city over from Bloomington, where the airport is. And my house abuts 77, where that's the new approach. It's not that bad. Really, there's some noise, but yeah, anyway. It's not worth making a complaint over. It's really quite manageable. And the planes are probably only, I want to say, a mile up, maybe even less. They were close enough you could read Delta on the bottom. Hey, oh yeah.
I'm in Ridgefield. I hear them because of the runway closure.
Okay.
They're over the house a lot.
Yeah,
it's pretty noisy,
anyway,
isn't it?
It's not that bad.
That's because we're catching it.
Yeah. Tell them to call me.
To your point, again, we usually have a handy kind of graphic that kind of compares the noise levels of aircraft to various normal things you hear. I was walking down the street and a couple of dump trucks went past me and it was louder than I couldn't even think, right? So it's nice to have that perspective about, you know, the aircraft noise impacts and what your everyday noise impacts are and how you think about those kind of things. But that's a good point.
The way I look at it from a regional perspective, I'd much rather have an airport that makes some noise than not have a major airport with no noise. Watch our region just go downhill.
Right down. Okay. Oh, go ahead, Martinson.
Thank you, Joe.
Member
Great
Martinson.
presentations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm looking at the map of the land use compatibility, and I was reminded of a headline that I saw just recently. There was a recent study published out of Denmark that talked about road traffic noise and its impacts on people's mortality. And I haven't had a chance to read the article yet, so I can't vouch for its veracity or its quality, but the headline was that a 14.9 decibel increase in road traffic noise outside the home was associated with an 8.1% increased risk of all-cause mortality, making it much deadlier than air pollution. So maybe what we need is a map of these kinds of land use compatibilities with where our freeways go throughout the metropolitan region as well. I'd like to suggest we think about that. Thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Other
that.
comments or questions? Go ahead, Member Anderson, and then.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Joe, and maybe this is a question for Carl or Bridget better. There was some talk years ago about Crystal and possible closure at that time. Have we kind of put that to rest and we're comfortable with Crystal being part of the system going forward?
I can defer to Bridget, but I would state that we just finished a runway at Crystal. It's a grass turf runway, and there's been updates at Crystal, so I haven't heard any talk about closing.
And I will add, from our activity projections at Crystal, we actually have seen a growth in activity at Crystal and based aircraft there as well. So from a regional perspective, I think it does still serve a purpose, but I won't want to speak for MAC if there's anything you'd like to add, Bridget.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jepson?
Thank you. So it looks like for both Yonoka Blaine Airport as well as Flying Cloud, they're both considered minor, and they have an existing runway that is at that 5,000, which is the maximum the state will allow. The recommendation is for 5,500 for Flying Cloud, and then, I apologize, let me get back, 5,400 for Yonoka Blaine. So then would that put it into the intermediate size? And if it does put it into the intermediate size, then it can go to a maximum in that category or classification that the state requires?
Member Jepson, so on the airport report card, so what that is really detailing is the airplane type. So you don't actually see, so the airplane classifications for different airplane types are wide ranging. And so the airplanes that are actually utilizing these airports do not need that runway length, but the aircraft classification type. So there are aircraft that would need that in some instances, but those are not actually operating at those airfields today. And so because that state law restricts 5,000 feet, we cannot go beyond that 5,000 feet. And so unless that law changes, that's the maximum those runways are going to operate at. The MAC is working on maximizing safety operations at those airports. You'll see Flying Cloud next month come through what they'll be thinking about to ensure the safe operation at Flying Cloud to maintain that 5,000 foot. But we will not be going over 5,000 feet. And that is just really looking at what those overall general FAA guidelines are for that aircraft type. And so you don't necessarily weren't seeing the full range of those aircraft operating at those airfields.
Thank you. Thank you.
Go ahead, member Jost.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I was just looking at the noise contour map, and I see the measurement of DNL. I'm assuming that's a sound level measurement. Could you just talk a little bit more about kind of what that means and more about the scale? I see 60 to 75 DNL, and what could I compare that to, or what does that mean?
Correct. Good question. I appreciate that. And previous presentation, we had a little more description of what the DNL. So DNL stands for day-night level. And so what that means that's a cumulative day average of what noise impacts you'd see, and that 65 to 75 is decibels. And so FAA has very clear guidance on what kind of indicates incompatible residential uses by those decibel levels, and that generally starts at about 65. And the higher your level, the higher the decibels, the greater the impacts. So with MSP specifically, the MAC does have a program that actually does work on mitigating any existing residential properties if they fall within that 65 DNL contour for a number of years. Mm-hmm. And so for MSP, this is updated yearly, the existing ones. And what you see here is the kind of projected in 2040. So these contours here aren't necessarily what you're seeing today. They're what we're expecting to see in 20 or so years. Mm-hmm. And so why that's a distinction is if we actually do get to that point and by 2040, potentially, right, if your house is within that for a number of years, you may be able to get some mitigation for noise in your home. Mm-hmm. MAC has already done a lot of homes. It's in the many thousands that they've done since the mid-90s, and those are all usually covered by the MAC as well. And so this is a metric just to really be considering more as we think about the future land use too. As you can see here on the map, if you look at Egan, because Egan wasn't necessarily built out when the airport was there, we were able to kind of guide certain land uses that are less impacted by noise. And so you can see kind of that industrial land use that follows the contours. Mm-hmm. Whereas on the Minneapolis side, obviously those homes already existed before those impacts were there. And so we've been working on mitigating the noise impacts from there. So this is really a more of a planning guidance too, but in the existing contours that MAC does produce every year, that's more of that day-to-day, understanding where those impacts are happening today. Mm-hmm. But so to wrap that up, yeah, so the DNL means is a cumulative impact, and then we're looking here is a 2040 potential impacts.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? It's a lot of good conversation here. Really appreciate it. Go ahead, Carl.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to stress to everybody that there is a noise committee that the airport has set up. So if anybody has a noise complaint, a constituent that has a noise complaint, they can go online and get to the noise committee. It's got quite a few people from around the area that chair this committee, and they have meetings regularly at the general office, so they can come and see what's going on, and maybe they can qualify for some mitigation,
Correct. It's the Noise Oversight Committee, or the NOC. And it actually meets during TAB meetings, so if you got to choose if you want to come to TAB or not. But it's certainly it's a great venue for people, everyday residents, to speak directly to FAA, speak directly to the MAC, and understand why the impacts are happening, and maybe figure out some route to future mitigation. And I'll also add one more note here. Carl, you missed one meeting coming up that I wanted to announce is Downtown St. Paul is kicking off their long-term planning process. Downtown St. Paul Airport, I'm sure you hear the airplanes fly over occasionally. And Monday evening will be their first public open event called Discover St. Paul. That'll kind of be covering kind of this initial kickoff of the planning process, which will be going over the next year or two here. And we'll be coming back next year probably to talk about it some more when it gets further along. But I just want to give a shout out to that as well if anyone wants to go there.
Excellent. I'm sure we'll hear the updates. Thank you. Last call. Anyone? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Madam Chair,
Excuse me,
I
I'm
want
sorry,
to bop back to the 2 million and the active transportation for a second, if I might.
Absolutely, I'm sorry we didn't catch it before.
No, that's fine. I'm not adverse from being resistive or civil disobedience or whatever, but it seems kind of unfair to ask this body to bless the $2 million that the legislature basically took from our cookie jar in a process that didn't involve us, and that our chair and vice chair of our active transportation working group actually wrote a letter in opposition to, and now you're bringing it back as an action item and wanting all of us to vote. So a couple of things. Number one, I'd really like staff to really take a hard look at it. If we don't have to vote to bless it, I don't think the body should.
I don't think that we have to, it's an information item, isn't it?
So I mean, you said it's gonna be an agenda item coming up.
Action.
Okay.
But, I mean, I don't,
Getting some clarification.
but maybe we can vote to table it and refuse to vote on it or something. I mean, yes, I like to
I think we all
peaceful
feel
protest,
similarly.
whatever, but.
Go ahead, Amy.
Madam Chair and members, I think our intent was to have you direct us to initiate a grant with the University of Minnesota. So it's not really blessing the grant, it's telling us as staff that we should do something to forward the contract with the University of Minnesota.
And Madam
And I
Chair,
think our-
if I might, I think the legislature already told you to do that.
Yeah. Yes, it does. We can certainly,
So-
I mean, a lot of people around the table here are displeased with that. Sure. I think most of us. I agree with what Commissioner Jobson said. It was a worthy project.
Well, and I think that's if I may.
Please.
I think that's something to definitely look into, because the language and the text used in the Anoka Dam Bridge, and it's a bridge that's over a dam, so I'm not swearing.
This time.
But you did.
Anyway, no, I mean, it specifically says it goes against, Minnesota state law and grant processes and stuff like that. So I really think some lawyers need to look at that language and really see what is expected, what's required, and stuff. Because, I mean, they're bypassing all of this body's process to do it. So I don't know what that specific process is, because the language is it's so weird.
Okay, well, we'll send that back.
I don't know what other way to describe it. It's just weird.
Madam
It's
Chair,
crazy.
if I might add, we'll just make sure with our legal that we're fine, and I'm hearing the preference is not to have it here for a vote. So as long as there's no restriction on us initiating that grant, we'll just assume we won't bring it here as an action item.
Okay, all right. Is that good with the body? Looks like everybody's shaking heads. Yep, I think we all feel the same. Thank you. Appreciate that. Well,
You just
I'm
got
sorry,
shorter, that's
Member
all.
Barber, we didn't get you to, I'm sorry.
I will just add that, yes, we will definitely look at that, but if the law says that we have to do that to take it through Met Council, we'll have to do that. We will definitely look to see what the options are,
Thank
but
you.
we will follow the law.
Thank you. Oh, okay. All right, anyone else? For the good of the order? Okay, before you leave, I wanted to institute a moment of silence. The assassination of Emeritus Speaker of the House, Melissa Hortman, and her husband, Mark. Also, the attempted assassination of John Hoffman and his wife, Yvette. We wish them a speedy recovery. Thank you, everyone. And with that, we will have a July meeting. I know we don't always, we will. There's a lot of work to be done here. So, thank you, everyone.
I don't know how many early points we get for a quick meeting.
A little early.
Madam Chair, does the governor really have to appoint the chair tab, or can tab appoint the chair tab?
So, we go. Yeah, the council.
The governor, I think, right?
No, the council.
You may try to want to bother dragging you up there.